All right, I think we can get started. Thank you everyone for logging in today. For those of you who don't know, OSH, or Oman Startup Hub, is the place to connect and collaborate for startups, supporters, advisors, and of course, the place to find out what's happening in the Omani startup ecosystem. If you don't already have one, be sure to create an account, sign up for the newsletter, follow our social media so that you keep up to date with events like this, and of course, everything that's happening in the Omani startup ecosystem. Of course, one of the biggest ecosystem players in Oman is the Oman Technology Fund. So we're very happy today to have Mohamed Al Rasbi, the Managing Director of OTF Techween and OTF Accelerators, also their entrepreneur in residence and a serial entrepreneur himself. He's going to take us through accelerators, how they're evolving, particularly the OTF accelerators and how they've really changed throughout the years, and all the startups that they're helping as well. So thank you very much, Mohamed. I will leave it to you. Just to let everyone know, there is a Q&A function at the bottom of the screen. You can ask any questions throughout the session. We'll either answer them in the Q&A or perhaps even throughout the session. We might type the answers, or some of them Mohamed will answer live at the end. If you'd prefer to speak and have your voice heard, please raise your hand. And at the Q&A session, after about 30 minutes or so, we will unmute your mic, and then you can ask your questions live. Otherwise, please send questions anytime. Hopefully, Mohamed will answer some of them throughout the session. Otherwise, there's Q&A at the end. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you everyone for joining us today. My name is Mohamed Al Rasbi. Just a brief background by myself, and I guess the reason why I'm here today. I've been in the tech space for a long time. I've been in technology, like or developing or coding for more than 25 years. Launched first SaaS-based business back in 2004, before SaaS was really known as SaaS. And at the same time, ran my own startup until I joined OTF back in 2017. So it's been about 3 years. Over the years, I've had the pleasure of working with more than 80 startups, and at the same time, more than 200 founders in these startups. The idea behind what we're trying to do today is to talk about the different, why should you care about accelerators, and if they're a fit for you as a startup or not. But before we get into that, I wanted to talk about the startup phases, because this is always a topic that everyone talks about, but it's always an issue in trying to figure out what are the different stages of startups. So this is a model that was developed by Startup Commons, and they've gone through different iterations. And I've edited it a bit to fit something that will align to what we have here in Oman. So I've changed things a bit, where we're looking at the customer problem fit. The idea there is that the startups would find a segment of customers that have a certain problem before moving to the problem solution fit. And always that range, it takes, sometimes it could take 12 months until you reach there, or it could take less, so depending on the team. And then ideally, what the stage you want to get out or get to is the product market fit. Without getting to that space, it's always very difficult. And there are different, let's say, information that you can find online, and you can actually, so this is one example. Another one is by Lean Stack. So they look at different ways of assessing the growth of a startup. And so one metric is looking at the annual recurring revenue. So hopefully when you hit product market fit, which is roughly around 24 months, you would hit around $1 million in annual recurring revenue. Having said that, so this is something that was developed by Village Capital. It's a model that they've done, and it's based from NASA. So these are the different stages. Now, not all startups are created equal. Not all startups transition from one stage to the next in the same pace. And not all startups so some startups will reach a certain point and then realize that they've hit a roadblock or a wall, and then they would go back again and iterate. So the idea for startups is constant validation, regardless of what it is. It could be validating the tech, validating the space they're working in, or validating different ideas that they can actually work on. So these are different stages that a startup would go through, and the different ways of receiving investments. the traditional ways of looking at the VC and the way they assess. So they will go through deal sourcing, and then they'll decide on a company that they will invest in, and then after they invest, they will manage that investment. And the idea at the end, any startup, not an SME, but any startup that investors invest in, the idea is that they exit. So ideally, they exit preferably an IPO, but generally they get acquired by a larger group of by a larger company, as we've seen, like for example, Kareem, or we've seen Talabat or Souq.com. So these are different examples in the area that they've been acquired by larger companies. The idea of the acceleration programs is actually to mitigate these risks. So you need to mitigate these risks. And how do you do that? So the proposal is going through an acceleration program. And this is not something new. Some people have been doing this since more than 10 years. Actually, it's more than 10 years that they've actually done this. So the idea behind this is that if you receive an investment, should you go through an accelerator or not is a decision that a startup founder needs to make. And I'm trying to make the case that there is value in running through an acceleration program. It's not meant for everyone, but if you do go through one, you need to figure out if it's meant for you or not. So at OTF, the way we've done our programs in the past, we run them over a period of 3 months usually. So we started from roughly end of last quarter of 2017. And so far we've run up to 2019, we ran the 4 cohorts of Techween, the pre-seed stage, and 2 cohorts of Wadi. So traditionally you come in, you receive an investment, and then you go through an acceleration program of 3 months. What we've realized is that once the program ends, that's, as I said previously, not all startups are created equal, so not all startups are able to accelerate faster. So we've decided to add different elements to the programming so that they start to receive the support during this time. And so the model that we've actually worked on over the past 3 years is going through different iterations, and we're calling it the OTF 3Os. And so the idea is that there's an ongoing selection, ongoing acceleration, and ongoing sustainability. And I'll go into more depth on each stage. But the idea is that we make better choices through our ongoing selection, and we nurture portfolios through ongoing acceleration, and we ensure, because one of the biggest factors of a startup is ongoing sustainability. Every space or every ecosystem has different challenges. I remember once I took a train ride from San Francisco to Palo Alto. On the train ride, person to my left was watching a video of somebody programming. Person in front of me was coding. So the philosophy or the idea of you working on your tech or what have you is very common. And the idea is that you need to take every ecosystem is different than the other. And the idea is, I believe that within, let's say, in our ecosystem, we need to provide ongoing acceleration. And without that, it'll be difficult for startups to succeed. And so because of that, we've started beginning of this year, kind of start the journey of blending programs together. So our Wadi and Techween stage companies, we merge them together at the same time. And the idea is to have one demo day at the end. Initially, obviously, because of the COVID-19, we went virtual, and most likely going forward, we'll always have a virtual demo day. And the rationale behind that is you would reach more investors by having a virtual demo day. And also at the same time, what we've done is we invited people from previous cohorts as well, or startups from previous cohorts to actually participate in the demo day. So now investors will have a chance to look at startups that have gone through this process. Now with cohort 7 that we just finished the application process, if a startup applies from day 1, they will have been onboarded to the different tools that we use, and hopefully if they get accepted in the program, so the length of their acceleration will be roughly 13 months. I get questions every now and then from people like, okay, so I have to wait 13 months to start? No, actually, no, you start from day 1, actually, or ideally you start before you even come to us, because the idea is that you validate as much as possible before coming to the program, so you benefit more from the program. And the program is not an academic program. The program is meant to, so our programs are generally workshops, like hands-on workshops, or there could be one-to-one sessions with mentors from different spaces or areas of expertise. And the idea is to help you reach or validate to different stages of your startup. So what is ongoing selection, or the way we look at it, and how do we measure? So, and why we're doing it this way. So from experience, we've realized there's certain symptoms or problems with the ideas or teams, and so we're trying to do that, trying to mitigate that risk from the beginning, and also trying to help the startups as well. So not just also from an investment point of view, but also from the team as well. So we've had teams that have been applying more than once, and every time we try to give as much feedback to them as possible, so that they can be in a better position when they present to us. Also, the quality of the founders, we need to assess, are they a good fit for us or not? Because the idea is, and you'll see later on with regards to ongoing sustainability, is that you need to make sure that you have a very, very vibrant community, that they help each other. And we rely a lot on our peer mentors or founders to help. Also, the maturity of the idea, because not all ideas are the same, and innovation is always a very tricky word. So innovation, everyone has different definition of innovation, but innovation could be just positioning or timing of what you're trying to do. So during COVID, there's some startups like Zoom, for example, they exponentially grow, but then you have other startups like Airbnb that felt badly because of the COVID-19. So you need, timing is always timing. There was a study that was done a while back where it said timing is a big factor. I always give this example of Netflix and another company that most people, at least not they have to be my age, I know this company is called Blockbuster. So Blockbuster they had their own, let's say, stores where you rented videos from. And then they actually started the streaming service from the before Netflix. Netflix originally just used to rent video or CDs or videos, movies, and through mail. But Blockbuster started actually streaming before Netflix. But the timing, and because of the different factors, Netflix was able to actually win over the streaming service compared to Blockbuster. Blockbuster, unfortunately, now is no longer, does not exist anymore. Also, we through our let's say selection process, we look at the engagement level of the founders, because it's important for us that the founders know that this is a lengthy journey. Startups usually take, if you are in a startup, usually it would take you, let's say, 7, 8, maybe 9 years until you reach an exit that is favorable to you as a founder, also for the investors. So it's a long journey. I remember I met someone, a founder of a company. She was in the pharmaceutical. She had a solution for pharmacies. It's been 5 years, and she received an investment of $2 million. So I asked her, I was like, okay, are you kind of settled? It's like, no, we're just starting, and it's already been 5 years. So it's a long journey. It's not meant for everyone, but if anyone who goes through it and goes through an acceleration program with the right community, it'll be hopefully an enjoyable journey, because you can never dictate the end. You don't know what's going to happen at the end. But if you manage the journey and you do it properly, then hopefully you'll get something out of it. And ideally, most founders, depending on their age, usually they would start 2 to 3 startups in their lifetime. So the idea is you get you learn as much as possible during this process. Now, with regards to ongoing acceleration, this is the bulk of what we've done so far. So we've opened up our acceleration programs to everyone in our portfolio companies, not just current batch, but everyone from Cohort 1, for example, of Techween or Wadi. And the way we measure it is like how many additional hours did the team receive? Were they asking for something specific or not? So we have teams that have asked, let's say they're about to launch a product and they want some workshops on, let's say, targeted marketing or growth hacking or what have you. So they're able to utilize better the program. Also, and the idea is to help them increase the velocity of growth rate. So the idea is that you will start with your customer problem fit, and then you move to problem solution fit, and then your product market fit. But sometimes what happens between problem solution fit and product market fit, you might end up invalidating something, and that's normal. But the idea is you increase that velocity to that point so that you can go back again and kind of restart the process, restart the process. With regards to ongoing sustainability, which is very important, and the way you look at it is the level of engagement of local and regional investors. So the idea is we engage more with investors locally and in the region, and we're trying to see how many of them are actually coming back and asking us to meet our startups. So this increases the chance of our portfolio companies to receive investment, follow-on investment, because that's one of the biggest metrics of a successful program or fund or what have you, if there are any follow-on investments received from outside external investors. Also, our current cohort, we have mentors, peer mentors that provide, let's say, an hour of their time, and we have mentors that actually ran workshops, some of them over a period of weeks, several weeks, and different topics from VC funding to, we had a workshop that was tech for non-tech founders. So if you're a non-techie and you are having a hard time understanding what is required in order to be able to assess a platform or something, so they went through three weeks of workshops to be able to assess what are the things that they need to do. Now metrics. These are our numbers. This is for our spring cohort. We had 10 Techween, 17 in Wadi, and we invited 19 from previous cohorts. So we had roughly 48 startups in a portfolio. The number doesn't add up, but we'll fix that. Anyhow, so the number of active workshops that we had during that period of time was 45. We had a massive number of mentor sessions, 1,400 mentor sessions. On average, startups received 86 hours of mentorship. And the idea behind that is, again, not all startups are created equal. Now, not all startups will be able to receive the same amount of, let's say, time with the mentors. So this was in our spring cohort. From the current one that we're running right now, we actually changed the model where we invite startups to, or encourage them to attend certain workshops. It's not open to everyone. So it's based on their progress, and based on the stage they are. What are they still custom problem fit, or they've reached problem solution fit? So based on that, we invite them to the certain workshops. And the idea is to better utilize the times with mentors. So also cost is obviously is an issue. So we need to look at that as well. So far, this was in September, this 2 months back. It was we went up to 66 startups. So this is in 1 month. We had 10 active workshops. We ran 260 mentor sessions. Almost 500 hours were delivered. On average, startups received 13 hours. So again, there's a better utilization of the time with the mentors. And again, the idea is that they would reach to a higher level of validation. For our next cohort, we've changed things around with regards to the way we assess the application process. So we opened the application in July 12th, and then for a period of 2 months, we had the application open. During that time, anyone that filled out the application, then we onboarded to another platform that we use, which is the Lean Stack platform. And with that, it walks through the different, let's say, tools like Lean Canvas, traction roadmaps, and the idea is to help the startups realize, are they actually, do they have the right goals or not, and being able to articulate what they're trying to work on. Also, the platform provided them with a series of playbooks so they can have a better understanding of foundations and ideation. So when they present to us, they'll be in a better shape. And then after that, we filtered down, and then again, we went to another level, which we invited 49 startups to a pitch bootcamp. And the whole idea behind this is we wanted to help them so they can present to us in the best way possible. So we ran over a period of 3 days. We ran different workshops, and at the same time, we had from our previous cohorts, we have peer mentors that provide hours to these startups. On average, each startup receives roughly 16 hours. So again, if you look at the constant iteration, so now we're even looking at our next cohort, cohort 8, once we open the application, the idea is that we'll actually run workshops as well. So we're trying to have a leaner delivery of our programs. So based on so we're merging portfolio management with the program. So they're kind of hand in hand. So looking at the startups, what do they require? and it's no longer like you have to be part of a batch in order to receive any form of support. So it's ongoing support, ongoing sustainability, ongoing acceleration. And one of the things that always helps in, so the best way to actually get good deals is through, there are two ways to get that, either from investors or from your previous cohort founders. Because they've gone through the process, they know the kind of startups we're looking for, and they will present to us. So the teams that were presented to us by previous founders were a good fit for us, because they've kind of, so the kind of pre-validated these startups, and it has helped us a lot during this time. There's a question. Sarah, I think I can't see the questions. If you can read them out, or do you want to take them later?
It was, yeah, we'd better take them later at the end. I'm sure some of them will be answered anyway during the session.
Okay, no problem. Because I'm actually reaching towards the end of the session, because I wanted to leave more room for Q&A. Now, 500. Let's say take an example. 500 startups this year. They've changed the way they're structured. So now they no longer have batches. They have rolling base applications. So you apply, they evaluate, they assess, and if they see you're fit, then they offer you investment. Y Combinator, through their startups.com platform, now they built a new let's say course material for future founders. It's like a 6-week program. So a lot of people are looking at different ways of utilizing this online medium to be able to deliver something for the startups. So, and the rationale behind that is because you're always trying to have better deal flow, and the rationale behind the better deal flow is that the more ready startups that come into the program, so they'll be able to better utilize whatever is being delivered to them. If they're not a right fit, then what happens is that they will go through the entire program, and then they'll say, okay, this was a waste of our time, or it was no use. So these are different things we're trying to do to avoid potential problems, and also because it affects. If you have a successful portfolio company that reaches a high level, it'll have a good impact on the other startups, because other investors will look at this. So we are, but at the same time, we are founder focused. So because we need to make sure and maintain a sustainable growth of these startups. And so if you tell them, like, we'll invest in you, but also you will receive a formal programming during the entire, let's say, lifetime or lifespan of your startup, they'll be more at ease. So make sure that they actually know that there's a holding hand with them during that entire process. With that, I'm reached to the Q&A session. I know I skimmed through this in a rush, but because I wanted to give room for some Q&A. Okay.
Thank you, Mohamed. That was great.
I'll go back to one of the slides. So just because I think there's, yeah, this one. Okay, go ahead. Okay. So if we can open up to the Q&A, that'd be great.
Perfect. So like I said, if you have any questions, please raise your hand or type them in the Q&A box. One of the questions is about digital demo days. What kind of challenges you face in delivering digital demo days? So there's a 3-part question. So we'll start with that, and then we'll go on to the next one.
Okay. So yeah, it was an interesting experience. So every let's say program has different challenges. For us, the biggest challenge was because everyone was remote, and it was the first time. This was the first demo day that we did back in April. But after that, we learned a lot. So for us, the biggest challenge actually it's the technology part. So making sure that every pitch that's being recorded is polished. So one of the things that we've done is, like, we actually purchased the microphones that we're going to distribute to our founders, because that was the biggest challenge that some of them had. As far as engaging with the investors, so the idea, so whenever you have a demo day, the idea is to highlight your startups. I believe that that's the biggest value add. So the way we're doing our demo day is that it's going to be inshallah on December 10th, and then it'll be followed by a week of one-to-one sessions with potential investors. So we're shortling the investors and then inviting them to meet our startups. But also because of the fact that we'll have roughly 30 startups pitching, we'll have a public event where everyone can see the entire pitch videos of everyone. But for investors, because some of them might not have the time to watch everything, we'll actually shortlist the teams that they've selected, and they will receive like a link to only view those that they were interested in. So it'll be easier for them to actually assess the potential opportunity in that startup. Okay. Answer the question.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And how are you adapting, or OTF? How's it OTF adapting in general to meet the needs of 2020? I think this is, and if you're changing your investment strategy to focus on areas that more suit the current market.
Okay, so as far as the way we deliver programs, is everything is done remotely right now. So we have people from like we have people from mentors to startups, like they're spread around different time zones. So time zones is a bit of a challenge, but it's not, thank God, it's not a big difference between the different locations that they are in. But we are doing, so everything's being delivered remotely. But having said that, so it does give some flexibility, but also you lose a bit of the community part, because anything that has to do with running a startup, because the biggest challenge you have is, can you speak to other founders? Because as I say, the water cooler discussions that you have, these sometimes are more important than actually the sessions, the one-to-one sessions, or because sometimes you can pick someone's brain and it's like, okay, I face this problem. Can you? So we're trying to mimic some form of gathering. So we have weekly sessions. So we invite everyone, and we talk about something different every week. So that's one way of kind of mimicking some form of community or town hall. But still, it does not alleviate or does not negate the need for community-based programming. I believe so. If a current cohort team comes in, at least part of it is let's say at OTF for a period of time, and then the rest of it can be done remotely, then we're in better shape. So a good example was cohort 5, our previous cohort 5 of Techween, and cohort 3 of Wadi. That worked okay because part of it was everyone's physically in the same space, but and then COVID hit, so then everyone switched remote. So it wasn't as bad. So still people were able to relate. To date, everyone's doing remotely. So sometimes you miss the few signals that when you're talking to someone. So I'm hoping, let's say, inshallah, by I think our next cohort is still going to be remote. Maybe the one after that will be. So one thing we're trying to do is and that's why we're doing digital demo days. And then if it's possible, then we'll have annual gatherings or gatherings during the demo day for the teams, so they can gather together, and hopefully that creates some form of starts or kickstarts a community-based support. That makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, it's like what you were saying earlier about another accelerator that doesn't, that's mostly about dinners and getting together rather than the actual federation. So
so because sometimes it's those dinners that that you have that actually are. That's where like a lot of decisions kind of made, or like initial talks are done, and then because of that, so the network effect makes a big impact. And in order to kind of validate your network connections by having these small talks and seeing if you connect with them or not, so that actually has an impact. It's not easy doing this all remote. It is challenging. But at the same time, it has opened up opportunities, because now we're able to deliver more to a larger group of people or startups that it would have been almost difficult to do in the past. So going forward, let's say, if we fast forward, let's say a year from now, and if we're doing this like physical demo day, physical program, we'll still have the remote sessions with the other cohorts as well, but from previous founders as well.
Okay. Another question is about someone who's a qualified mentor interested in connecting and being more involved. Is there an email or something like that for people to get in touch?
If they can connect with you and then you connect them with me, that'd be good.
So then if you create an account on the OSH website or send an email to us on support@omanstartuphub.com, then we will be happy to connect you with Mohamed and the OTF team. Another question, can you run the program successfully without investment in the startups?
Good question. Personally, I believe no. And the reason why is because you need to, it changes the dynamics of the relationship. So that's one. And there needs to be something, both parties need to have skin in the game. So the startup, they have the skin in the game in the sense that there's a possibility they will not have that investment. So if they know they have the investment, they'll take things more seriously. That's one. Second is you need the investor to invest in you in order to take you more seriously. I don't think having a non-investment, regardless of the amount. So amount is a different topic. How much you invest or not invest, or like the range. That's a different topic in itself. But I think having some form of investment, it makes things more clear. The relationship is much clearer, and also because the startups, especially at the early stage, they need some form of money in order to be able to actually do some of these validation. So if you don't invest in them, then it'll be very difficult for them to do something. And so at the end of the day, you'll end up running programs that don't actually have a large impact. And then it becomes more of a social responsibility kind of event than it is of an investment. So we invest, and the idea is to help build the ecosystem. And one way of building the ecosystem, you invest in them, you accelerate them through this ongoing acceleration process. So the idea is that you receive investment, will accelerate you until you exit. That's the idea. And that means maybe down the line, it could be just, give an example, during the summer, we ran a masterclass. So it was just 4 days for 4 startups. And alhamdulillah, because of that, some of the startups actually were able to raise funding because of that. So the way we're doing it is actually because we have roughly 100 plus startups in our portfolio. This gives us the flexibility to provide different support to them, and so the sky is the limit of what kind of support we provide them. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of pain, but it's a lot of fun. Because every week, currently every week, we kind of do pivots. Actually, the way we provide the program, so it's not static. So it's not like something we did, like let's say, we know timing-wise roughly when the program will start, when it'll end. But as far as the actual what is being delivered every week keeps on changing on every week based on the feedback we get from the startups and their requirements.
Good. Someone is asking also about co-founders. So are you in a position as OTF to help founders with maybe technical backgrounds and have ideas, and they want to start something but need maybe co-founders with a different background?
So just to clarify, are they a technical co-founder or they're not technical co-founders?
No, they are. Oh, without engineering or technical backgrounds to potential co-founders, I guess, with engineering and technical backgrounds.
Okay. One thing I noticed in Oman, there's a lot of people with technical experience that nobody knows about them. So there's a lot. So it's always a challenge finding them. But there's, I know the Google Developer Group, for example, they have more than 2,000 people, 2,000 members in there. And it's like, so these numbers, so I would highly recommend you reach out to some of these groups. They exist. There are a lot of them. They're in hiding, especially the techies, because they always like to be in the dark. But they are there. We try to shy away from trying to put 2 teams together. We tried that in the past; didn't work very well. And so so the idea is that, and that's one of the learnings we found, is that teams need to have worked with each other for a period of time. If they haven't, then there's a likelihood of them breaking apart afterwards. So this is my version of this model. If you look at this model, the way it looks at it is like you have problem solution fit, and then you have vision founders fit. So sometimes what happens is like so if we go back one step, which is customer problem fit, they've finished that, they've reached the problem solution fit, and then the vision founders fit. This is where problems starts happening. Because what might happen is that they might have started off with one idea, and then they realize after validation that actually the initial idea that they were going to work on does no longer make sense. So they need to pivot to something else, and then the vision changes, and then that's where founders kind of fall apart. If they've been working together for a period of time, they can actually find ways to work around that. But if they haven't, then it doesn't work. But again, just to clarify, startups, it's not something that's going to go away anytime soon. There's a lot of investments in startups. The trend is growing. It's not decreasing. It's not because it makes a lot of sense. It builds an ecosystem. It's a lower risk of building jobs compared to other ways. The experience. So if you concentrate on the experience during the journey itself, there's a lot to be learned. So people who come out of these programs or these, let's say, startup journeys, they're better positioned to be better, let's say, if they end up working, better employees, or they can end up working with other startups as well in the future.
Okay, but still reach out to Google developers and other groups like that exist.
So we don't tend to, we tried it, didn't work, so we're shying away from it at the moment.
Fair enough. I think you mentioned it in one of your slides about the success rate, but someone is asking about applications. So how many people apply versus how many people do you support?
So that number is not public. All we can tell you is that, let's see, how many we invited. So, I'm sorry, let's see if I can go faster. Sorry. Okay, so how many applied, it's not public knowledge, but these are the startups that were invited. So 49 startups were invited during the pitch bootcamp. So that's the number we can share at the moment. At the end of the day, we were looking, and so just to clarify, because of this, our next cohort, the plan is when you open the applications, actually increase the workshops we run during the 8. So it'll be a series of workshops on how to better position yourself to be able to present to us, but also how to validate the idea. Again, innovation is not just creating the next big thing. So sometimes innovation is actually seeing something, doing enough customer discovery sessions with potential segment. If you go through so anyone who applies, just to clarify, anyone who applies to us, they automatically get onboarded to Lean Stack. So they have free access to build, utilize all the tools. So if they actually go through that, they'll be in a better position to decide, is it something I really want to do or something, maybe, okay, I'll do it next, and let's say later in the future. So that in itself gives them they'll be in a better position to make a decision, should we take this journey? Again, this journey is not a short one, it's a long one. So some people think, sorry?
It's worth applying either way, you get connected into the...
Yeah, so if anyone's not sure, if anyone's not sure if you really want to take this journey, I would highly recommend to apply, because from applying to the time you either get a rejection or you get an acceptance, you would roughly, so next cohort, roughly, other than your own time, you'll receive more than 30 hours of support. Of either workshops or one-to-one sessions or what have you. So you get a lot out of it at the end of the day.
Here's a good question, I think. How are the companies doing during the pandemic? Is it affecting the companies that you're accelerating? Is it affecting their growth? What about previous cohorts as well? Do you see any kind of impact of the pandemic?
So obviously the pandemic has hit some of the startups hard, and some of the startups actually, they're doing a lot, they're doing very well. We have startups that were smart enough to pivot beforehand. So they realized that the pandemic was going to impact their business, so they pivoted to something else. So we have a mix. Startups that have been hit hard, and the startups that have actually been doing very well because of the pandemic. Because also remember, there's for some of the let's say startups, the cost of acquiring new customers has dropped because of the new way of living has dropped a lot of the initial friction of utilizing any online tools. So a lot of people are now using online tools more freely, and it has reached a larger group of people. So because of that, it actually has helped some of our startups.
What's the status of investors' knowledge in tech? This attendee is asking because they feel that most investors are into more conventional businesses rather than tech businesses. So do we have a well-established culture of investors, and what's their knowledge base like? Okay,
so MENA region, it's somewhat developed. In Oman, there are investors in Oman. It's not that there aren't. There are investors. So it is every. So it's let's look at it two ways. So you have startups and you have investors. So I remember in cohort 1 of Techween back in 2017, the sheer improvement on the way they present their ideas, it has exponentially grown. Same thing with the investors as well. It's growing. It's not growing as fast as startups, which is normal. But then again, startups can actually go outside the country to receive investment. There are people that do invest, just to clarify. It's not that there aren't any people that invest in Oman, so there are.
Have you seen a mindset shift in terms of ideas for the startups that present themselves?
Yes. Okay. So we're seeing a shift in the way they're, let's say, the way they're articulating their ideas. We've seen that. We've seen the kind of ideas that they want to work in. So it is increasing. And I'm hoping through whatever we're doing at the moment with regards to the application process, I'm hoping that we'll be able to encourage more people to think outside the box even more, because there are a lot of ideas that can be actually tackled, and there are different ways to work on them. So we've seen, it's not like but then again, the issue is that when you talk about new ideas, so the question is, startups are not SMEs. So that's one. Second is innovation. There are different types of innovation. So we should not limit ourselves to one type of innovation. And again, startups at early stage, they tend to pivot and they tend to invalidate their ideas fast. So, and that's something where we help them. So if they can start with one idea and then end up to something different. So if you have a very strong team, they can actually pivot to something else and they can continue working on their new idea. And then maybe they invalidate that idea and continue something else. So it's a constant iteration of the validation.
Do you find that this year in particular, there's a change in the ideas that are coming through, or is it similar to other cohorts?
There's a change, especially, so there's a change, but also some of the startups need to take into account the pandemic. So it's very difficult to assess what's going to happen a year from now. So startups need to figure out if I'm going to start something now, what's going to happen later on if the pandemic goes away, what's going to happen to the habits of people. So if you're smart, you're going to work on an idea that kind of maintains what's it called? It starts encouraging people to develop new habits, and so that they can actually continue utilizing it once the pandemic goes away. So, for example, from 1st of January 2021, plastic is no longer allowed. So, as Omanis, we tend to like our plastic bags, and we don't tend to take our plastic. So, the idea of taking plastic bags to go on shopping is not something we'll be comfortable with. I have the belief that there will be a lot of online shopping of groceries. People like, I can't go to shop with plastic bags, so I'm going to order online. So people start building that habit or start working their what's called the messaging along those lines. Then I think that if you're smart, there are so many different ideas you can work on. So there isn't a limitation.
Does OTF monitor the progress of startups after the accelerators, and how?
Yes, so okay. So traditionally we'd have so startups are always welcome to contact us and come back to us for any support they do, and most of them do that. And then we do quarterly updates with them, but also given the new method of how we're running the programs, that you would constantly get support. So we right now we're inviting startups as far as cohort 1. So we have teams from cohort 1 who are participating in programs right now. So because of that, we're able to provide support to them, and this is actually has had an impact on the startups, which I'm very happy to see.
Now, there's a couple of questions that maybe are not related to the accelerators. Maybe you can't answer them, but we'll put them out there, and then feel free to say if that's privileged information. Okay. One is, what is the highest value of all startups OTF is invested in? Okay.
Billions. Obviously, we can't disclose that at the moment. But so just to clarify, valuations is a very subjective thing. Again, remember, we started investing so much for Techween Wadi towards the end of 2017. Let me go to the. Where is this? I'm sorry. No, sorry. Yeah, so usually good teams will reach product market fit after roughly two years. So a bulk of our investments, other than the first cohorts, are roughly they have not reached this stage yet. They haven't reached the 24 months mark yet. So the idea is that you would this concept of or like this fascination with valuations. I have valuations. You can look at that after, let's say, 4 years of startup has been in business, or 5 years after a startup has been in business. But before that, and within our ecosystem, I think it's not healthy to keep on looking at these numbers. It's like it's not. Personally, I don't think it's healthy. I think you need to provide them the support they need to go through these stages or phases at a faster pace through a series of validations, and then hopefully they reach a product market. Because once you reach a product market fit, the idea here is that you would be able to pour gasoline or investment into the startup, and they'll be able to grow exponentially. So that's the idea. But before that period of time, it's not. So roughly the average worldwide is like 24 months, but obviously from different one startup to another is different, and the space they're in as well. So I'll give an example. There's a accelerator, I think they're in Germany. If I'm mistaken, they're what's it called health tech or in the health space. Their acceleration program is 13 months long. Okay, so some spaces or some areas of the length takes a bit longer, and sometimes regulation is a factor. So you might have the tech de-risked, you might have everything ready, but then if regulations are not allowed, then you might not be able to actually proceed. So sometimes that can be a hurdle as well.
This also, I don't know if you'll be able to answer, but how much ideally would you get if you're a promising startup in terms of investment? Sounds like objective.
Okay, so for Techween, this is public knowledge. So Techween, we invest 50K and we take 7% equity. For Wadi, it starts up from 100K for 10%. So that's the range. And for the Sur, our growth stage is from 500,000 up to 3 million. So depending on the startup, depending on the stage you are in, so they get so for Techween and Wadi, more or less it's kind of fixed, more or less. Just is based on the startup valuation stage, and there are different factors taken into account as well.
And then you support the startups look for other investors as well.
Yeah, that's our aim, is because this investments is based on reputation. So if you bring a good startup to an investor, and if they like what they see and they've seen that the startups they're answering the questions in a proper way, the kind of, because investors are generally traditional investors, they're after one thing, which is financial returns. So if they feel that the startup is in a good position to reach the next levels, then they'll invest in that, especially the good ones. Investors will not invest in an idea that if they don't feel comfortable with the team. So our job is to get them to a certain point where they're presenting the best light possible to potential investors. So that's one of the things we do with them. We try as much as possible.
And I think this will be the last question before we wrap up. Okay. Founders and co-founders have to be full-time on the startup to be qualified for the programs?
So again, traditionally, yes. And the rationale behind this is that this is a long journey. Remember, there are other startups as well outside, or even in Oman, that are working full-time day and night. And so if the founders are not full-time, they have no investor in the future will invest in them, because the investor will say, okay, so you want me to invest money in your startup and you're not willing to take the risk. So if you're not willing to take the risk, then I'm not going to invest in you. So that's, and also some of the insights from the investment we made, teams that were not full-time, they tend not to perform better than others. But having said that, this is not a generalization. So depending on the team, we look case by case, but generally future investors will not invest in it. So let's take this from this point of view. Future investors will not invest in teams if they're not full-time. And so what happens is that if somebody's not full-time, then they need to reduce the equity in the startup. So, but most of the time what happens is that the founders will not want to reduce equity because they feel like, wait, we're going to get investment. So that means that my valuation is going to be, I will get a small stake, but a bigger pie. Then I want to maintain my stake. But then the investment will never materialize because investors want someone to be there full-time. And because of that, we assess. Having said that, there are times where we make exceptions, but the exceptions based on certain conditions. And again, because the methodology we're employing right now, We might not make investment on them at the beginning. We might work with them until they're ready to commit full time. So that's another thing we look at as well.
So usually yes, but there are cases that are no.
So usually no. Some cases are yes. So usually, so to clarify, teams need to be full time, and so there are special cases where it's special, very, very special cases.
Makes sense. Well, thank you very much, everyone who attended. We've recorded this session. It's going to be on Zoom. If you want to watch it again, you can register and log in to watch it again. Otherwise, please do reach out to the OSH team, and we will be sure to pass on any other questions or queries that you might have. If you're not already following us on social media, you should, so that you know about the other events that are coming up. We have another webinar at the end of this month, and of course, lots of new features that are coming up on the website. So thank you very much. I know it's tough to come on at 5 p.m., so thank you for those who attended, and hopefully you've learned a lot from Mohamed. We're also going to be producing a one-pager summary. So if you would like that, then please do let us know, and we'll be sure to share it with you. Thank you very much, and have a good evening. Thank you, Mohamed.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye.